Thank you everyone for coming. This is a fantastic mini symposium to run, and I'm really excited that it's the second year that Julia Kahn has had a Earth Science mini symposium. And I want to say, like, comparing this year to last year, I think we had such a diverse array of topics, and it was really interesting to hear how people are coming together sort of from all over the range of climate and Earth issues. I do think that we ran a little bit over, but I think for the better in that we got more questions in and we got to really hear what everyone's talking about. So we might have a little bit of a short discussion because I want to encourage everyone also to go to the keynote, which starts at 5:10 which is in about 15 minutes by Dr. Catherine Hyatt, who's on the organizing committee. She does quantum chemistry at AWS and is super cool, so totally encourage you to go to that in the closing. And I guess a logistical note, we booked a dinner for the speakers, but we may have extra space. We're going to go at 7 p.m., but maybe meet downstairs at 6:50 if you're interested. And we'd love to have as many of you as we can logistically manage with the restaurant not getting mad at us.
Yeah, exactly. So do obviously please show up if you have interest. We just booked for 16 because we didn't know how many there would be. And I guess the others might just need to sit at another table. Also, I don't know exactly how big the restaurant is. We haven't been there. But in case you miss us, it's the Gazana Eritrean restaurant. That should be just a 5-minute walk. I think if you came from there, it's kind of also that way, but not quite to the city center yet. I think if you just Google for Eritrean restaurant, you will definitely find it. There should be only one in the 5-minute walking distance.
Yeah, but we would love to, even though we'll have a bit of a maybe short discussion here, maybe no discussion here, but we would love to continue this and build some collaborations. And it was amazing to have such a large audience, including speakers and in addition to speakers here today. Yeah, should we just close? Or does anyone have any concluding comments or things that they would like to comment on from this session? Please do.
So yeah, actually when you showed a bit the documentation of speedy weather, and I guess that also aligns with those shenanigans, it's not really in line with typical documentation, which just includes an example and how to deal with the software, because you have a textbook, as you said, with equations and describing the physics. I mean, yeah. But so yeah, what are the thoughts generally on that? Because I feel I buy the idea. I think it's a good thing, but it's maybe a bit unusual compared to other parts of the community that don't necessarily describe the details of the equations that are used. So what should we prefer? Documentation that's updated very regularly with the latest physics, papers that describe this, a mix of both. Do you have any takes on that?
Yeah, I find that a very interesting question because obviously, if we develop packages, there's a wide range of different documentation, as you said, that we can provide. One is obviously the use cases. Sometimes you also might just have a list of all the doc strings and just basically so that you can easily search the documentation and find okay, this is the expected arguments for this function, this kind of stuff. I feel that in model development, what we often end up with is that you pick some ideas from different places, and so there's not this one paper that describes your method exactly, and you take exactly that one over. Sometimes you take shortcuts, sometimes you feel oh, I take this piece from here, this piece from there. And so at least in my case, in our case, that was really the case where we said okay, somehow we have to document the puzzle pieces that every model development puts together. And so basically you're then ending up in a situation where you say okay, I guess we have to write down the equations and say which shortcuts are we taking, which pieces come from where. There's usually then kind of let's say this is the equation we're solving, this is how we're solving it. For more details, find it here. I think this is in general good practice. Unfortunately means also it's a good amount of work that comes on top of it. So it literally took me a couple of months to basically write that down, all of that. some of that is somehow copied. It's a good question. I find this is also for the wider community really a question of like what is because I mean there's a lot of stuff where suddenly people like start reusing packages from other people. Are there like typical gaps in documentation that we need? How can you basically, I don't know, if you kind of feel like, oh, this is a good package, but I don't really know how to use it, how to interface it, do you basically say like a request to like more documentation on this? Does that put too much burden on the developer? Because obviously if someone, no, I thought you had an idea and wanted to say something, wanted to say an outcome. Yeah, I think it's definitely a good discussion point. Maybe if someone has another point on that, please raise your hand. But otherwise, I think it is also something that's really good to discuss. For example, over dinner, of like, hey, like, how do we make sure that all our stuff is interoperable?
I just wanted to say that in ecology as well, we definitely don't go to the extent you did with the equations, but we often put math latex in the doc just to be like, so it's not just the code. If it's coming, we'll put the paper it's from and the math latex just to round out explaining what we're doing. Yeah.
Felix, did you want to?
Yeah, just about the gaps in the documentation. When putting packages together, we started a Julia Geo tutorials repository, and there's a tutorials wishlist issue. So if you find something that is missing, or where you find there's a gap, that basically you have two packages that kind of work together, but it would be good to write this down, put this there. So at least we have a list of stuff that we want to work on.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I like it resonates with me deeply, this documentation thing. I do like the idea that essentially documentations become like textbooks. For me, very important bit of the documentation is having like examples that in the code, make sure the code is really updated. So when you have like examples that are iterated as soon as you commit something, then you are ensuring that what you get is what you will get with that version of the package. I think that like changed my life because I don't know if you try to go to any other model, and I don't know, I have struggled a lot with that. And then you had to go and literally knock the door on some developer to figure it out. But in the other aspect, like what Milan was saying, like when you get, instead of getting a request like, oh, can you put more documentation here and there, so then putting all the pressure on one or two developers, it's much easier if we can have some way of interacting, figuring it out a little bit, and then here's a tutorial I made, or like I'll try to help make a tutorial, and then we work together. That's like much more. When we get that, it's like, oh, all right, okay, I know I'll put some effort here. It's like more of an investment, and then we'll have a new contributor or something. That's much better instead of like asking, because then we have like 100 things to do. Anyway.
I think we can do one more quick comment, and then, out of respect for the keynote, we'll cut it and continue at dinner.
Yeah, very quickly, I think I totally agree with that. Like my experience sometimes with some packages, like I try to use them, I break my head trying to make them work, but once I understand, it's just like, oh, I got what I wanted, I move on. And sometimes I was like more, okay, like can I at least like empty my brain into the documentation, even if it's not super structured, but at least I do like a very tiny contribution, at least the next person in line doesn't go through the same pain. And sometimes I feel like PRs on documentation are like the lowest hanging fruit for like contributing to packages. So I think it's kind of like something that I thought it was nice.
Amazing. Then
I can sanely advertise the documentation workshop that happened on Tuesday. That gives you all the right tools to do this contribution.
great. Okay.
Yeah, I can say I went to that. It was pretty good. You can check out the materials.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Really last point, or otherwise we just cut it short here. Sure.
Just a quick one.
Yes.
One thing. So as a package developer, I work on GeoMarchy, right? One thing is that I'll often never hear about use cases that do work. I only hear about use cases that don't work until the use cases that do work break. So if you guys can like, I don't know what the best channel for this is, but maybe like post examples of use cases that do work, and then we can sort of test those, make sure they're stable and so on.
No, very, very good point. Great. So then we're coming to the end of this mini workshop. I feel like if anyone is like bugging me and like Skylar did last year, we can probably definitely have one of those again next year at JuliaCon. So if the whole community is excited about this, we can have something similar. I think that's very exciting. Maybe some of you will be at Julia EO on the Azores in January. Otherwise, we'll just close it here. I'm very much looking forward to the dinner. I think you have all the details. Otherwise, bother us again. And thanks so much for coming. Thanks so much for contributing your talks. I'm really looking forward to the dinner, but also all the progress you will make in the next year, and then happy to see all the results in 2025. Thank you.
For organizing.
Of course.